Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast with me, Newcastle United editor Aaron Stokes, and I'm joined on this Friday morning by Lee Wilmot from Football London as we assess Newcastle United's game with Tottenham this weekend. Plenty to talk about as Ange brings his side up to Tyneside, and no one better to talk to it about. Lee, how are you doing this morning?
I'm very well, thank you. That was a perfect start there. I think my dog might have barked just in the background as you introduced me there, but she has stopped now. So apologies for anyone joining straight away there and hearing that. I'm very well. Enjoying the sunshine, enjoying the start to the Premier League as well. Deadline day tomorrow. Not sure when anyone's going to listen to this, obviously. And then, we've got the dreaded international break thereafter. So just looking forward to this weekend.
Yeah, a hectic couple of hours as the transfer business finishes, and then obviously a trip to Tyneside this weekend for Tottenham, and that is where we'll start. Now, look, I don't want to speak out of turn here, but from Newcastle United's point of view, this has been a very, very good fixture the last couple of years, especially at St James's Park. We obviously had the famous 6-1, we had the famous 4-0 last season. Is this a fixture that Tottenham now dread when they see it on the calendar coming up to St James's Park?
Yes. I just started the podcast there with all the enthusiasm and excitement and everything. The Premier League's back, and I really don't mean it this weekend because, I'd never, ever look forward to that trip up to St James's Park because it's filled with nothing but defeat, unfortunately. And you look at it, I don't think Newcastle have been particularly brilliant to start the season so far. I think it was probably fair to say. And they'll probably look at it and think, this is beautiful. This is a beautiful one to get stuck into, really kickstart the season. Tottenham at home, we always beat them. Absolutely dreading it. Never look forward to this one. But Spurs have been... Obviously, the draw against Leicester on the opening day wasn't ideal, but we have started the season on the front foot and pretty well. We should probably have 6 points from 6, the way we've played in the first 2 games. So there's cause for optimism, but I don't think we can ever get too optimistic about going to St James's Park because, as you say, that 6-1 sticks in the memory. And last year's 4-0 was absolutely atrocious from a Tottenham point of view. So I don't know what it is about going up to St James's Park, but we always seem to have problems up there.
Yeah, well, it was never the case that Newcastle would look forward to a Tottenham game, but I think since Eddie Howe coming in, as I say, at St James's Park, Newcastle will probably be seeing it as the perfect chance to kickstart their season because, as you say, they've been a little bit stagnant in the last couple of games. But Ange will obviously bring his team up here, with none of that in his mind. He'll be going there to win. And I think if I can just put 2 questions in one on this, what can we expect from Tottenham this weekend? As you say, they've had a quite a good start of the season. And also in sort of a wider context of the season, where do you think they can go to this season under Ange and under this new look team under him?
It's when you look at it, I think the way we started last season, I think caught everyone by surprise. 10 games unbeaten to start last season was kind of unheard of because all the talk of an Ange Postecoglou team was that it took a while for his philosophy and his brand of football to get into the players' mindsets, and it was kind of the first season was always going to be like a transition season because his second season at a club was always the better one. Everyone knows how he wants to play. Is in tune with kind of the high press and the intensity that he expects from his players every single minute of every single match. Like we've spoken about the fact that if his teams are 2, 3, 4-0 up, he doesn't want them to stop. He wants them to keep going. He wants them to keep pressing, keep pushing, and keep trying to score more. So, the second season was expected to be the one, and I think you saw a little bit of the kind of. You can't really call it tiredness after 10 games of the season last year, but we lost a few players to injury. Then Sonny went away to the Asian Cup. Obviously, we had a couple of players off at the African Cup of Nations, and I know every club has these issues, but the squad depth wasn't quite there. We kind of tailed off a little bit, and I think 5th place was probably where we deserved to be in the end last year. So I think that, there's a lot of excitement and anticipation for this season under Ange and what he can actually bring. I think you ask 99% of Tottenham fans out there and they'll say they want to win a trophy. They probably don't even care which one it is. They want to win a trophy because it's been so long. And I'm preaching to the converted there from Newcastle point of view, aren't I, really? But yeah, we want to win a trophy somewhere. We want to get back in the Champions League. We want to get to a point of challenging at the top of the table, but that takes time. Look at what Mikel Arteta has done at Arsenal. I speak about him quietly, obviously, but he had 2 8th place finishes when he first came in before he then got Arsenal to 2 back-to-back runners-up finishes. So challenging Manchester City at the top is no mean feat, and Arsenal have shown that in the last 2 seasons and 2 seasons before that, obviously. So yeah, I think there's hope that we can get into the top 4 this season. It'll be interesting to see how we cope with Europa League football alongside the Premier League, and then potentially challenging for trying to win the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup. But yeah, I think he's got a better squad now. He's shifted a lot of players in this transfer window that had no future under him, essentially. There's still a couple more that could probably go out the door before the window closes tomorrow. He's brought in some young players that are clearly for the future, but I think for the here and now as well. You look at Archie Gray, for example. It was a £40 million package all told when you think about Joe Rodon going in the other direction for £10 million. He played 50-something games for Leeds United in the Championship last year. So as an 18-year-old playing 50 games in the Championship, you've got to have something about you. He's not necessarily a signing for the future. He is a signing for the here and now. So yeah, I've forgotten what the questions you asked me. I've rambled a lot there about Tottenham and Ange and the optimism and stuff. So yeah, I think there is... From the fan base, there is a lot of excitement, and I think the first 2 games, maybe it was tethered a little bit by only drawing with Leicester, but the number of chances we created in both games, he wants to play that attacking brand of football. Whether he plays wholly attacking at Newcastle, I'm not sure. He might go a little bit more defensive in the midfield than last weekend. I think we had... Yves Bissouma obviously scored the first goal against Everton last weekend. I think ahead of him there was James Maddison, Dejan Kulusevski, Wilson Odobert, Son Heung-min, and who was playing on the other side? I can't remember who it was playing on the other side, but it felt like there were 6 attacking players on the pitch and only Yves Bissouma in front of the defence. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think you say you were rambling there, but you answered the question perfectly. The question was where Tottenham can go under Ange, and I think, as you pointed out at the start of that answer, last season, I remember that run and Tottenham were flying, they were top of the table. There was talk of, an ill-fated title tilt, which soon dropped away. I won't dwell on that too much. But I think you've touched on Ange there and about how it maybe takes his teams, a little bit to get to his style of play, to really understand the project. And I think I see similarities between Ange and Howe at Tottenham and Newcastle. You've touched on the fact that 2 clubs are desperate for silverware, but I think you've also got this real similarity now of managers that have came into the club, maybe with a little bit of a point to prove, but have very quickly understood what it means to be manager of those 2 clubs.
Yeah.
Is that how the feeling is at Tottenham around Ange after he's came in?
Yeah, I think so. I think he got kind of bored of the questions. You will have seen him in press conferences and stuff. He's very straight talking. He likes to have a bit of a laugh when journalists ask him questions, and he's happy to have a laugh. But he's quite happy to tell them straight if he doesn't believe in something that they've said. He'll tell them. So I think he got bored of Is this a big challenge for you coming into a big club, coming into the Premier League, this, that, and the other? Is like, well, he kind of bit back, didn't he? And Celtic are a big club. There's expectations anywhere you go. It doesn't have to be a specific league or a specific club that you go to. The expectations and the way football is, there's always going to be that pressure on you wherever you go. You don't have to be in a big league and a big club to feel that. So yeah, he's done what he's done at Celtic. He's done what he's done in Japan and Australia as well. So yeah, you're right. I think there is that desire from, I think that is more from the fan base to want to prove that we've done things right with the manager, or we've got things right as time has gone on. Daniel Levy's been criticised over the years for not spending money. It's kind of with FFP and PSR rules now, you're kind of looking at it thinking, well, he did a good job in that time. You look at what other clubs are having to do, like Newcastle had to sell some players, didn't you, in the start of the transfer window to try and comply with certain rules and stuff. So you look at the way the club has been run, and it's been kind of building towards this sort of place. And Tottenham fans hate the kind of building for the future. We're transitioning. We're moving on to the next step because it's felt like we've been doing that for the last 20 years and never really got anywhere. But yeah, I do. You're right. I do see similarities with Ange and Eddie Howe, because I don't know how you think about it, but like when the big money came into Newcastle, everyone's looking at it thinking, oh, you're going to sign this player, you're going to sign this player, you're going to do this, you're going to get this manager, Newcastle are going to be amazing. And then you went for Eddie Howe, and it's like, oh, that's an interesting choice. That's kind of a sensible choice for Newcastle. How was that kind of perceived back then, and how do the fan base see Eddie Howe now?
Well, you make a good point, because as you say, this money came in. Steve Bruce lasted all of one game, and then it was right. Who are they going to get in now? A lot of the managers that Spurs have had in recent years, Jose Mourinho, Antonio Conte, they were naturally linked. So then all of a sudden, when the club were actually very, very close to getting Unai Emery when he was at Villarreal. So when they went for Eddie Howe, it was a little bit of, okay, sensible. We can see why they've done it. Newcastle were obviously in the relegation zone at the time. But he was very much seen as someone who would come in, maybe steady the ship and then go. Whereas I think now he's seen as the man who, if he keeps progressing at the rate he has, he can take them far. And I actually think Newcastle have maybe done it in a little bit of reverse, whereas Tottenham went for the success by bringing in Jose, by bringing in Conte, who, on paper are winners. They can win titles. It's actually just proven that the success is probably going to come under a manager who maybe isn't as shiny, and who, I mean, Ange's obviously a winner. He's just done it at a very low level. So I do see massive similarities between them and the clubs, and definitely the fact that they both need to win a trophy sooner.
I think from Tottenham's point of view, like when you go from what the job that Mauricio Pochettino did and getting us so close to where the promised land, as it were, finishing second and third in the Champions League final, and then it kind of moved on, and Daniel Levy went, right, let's get a winner. We need a winner. And Jose Mourinho, Antonio Conte come in. Personally, I wasn't enamored with either of those two managers coming in when they signed, and there was a buzz and excitement around the club for a little bit. Obviously, the Amazon documentary and Jose being a big name, Antonio Conte being a big, but I could never see either of them lasting, and it's turned out that way. I'd like Ange Postecoglou to last and to take us through the next 5-6 years would be great, I think. Yeah,
I think a lot of neutrals think that as well. I think, as you touched on, Ange's pretty blunt style in press conferences have won him quite a few followers from clubs. You've already touched on it a little bit in a previous answer, Lee, but the transfer window that Tottenham have had, on paper, some very, very exciting names. Obviously, you've mentioned Archie Gray from Leeds, Odobert from Burnley, and Lucas Bergvall, who looks very good.
Yeah.
How do you rate the transfer window? And as you said, have Tottenham gone too far one way in terms of signing the youngsters? I'll touch on Solanke in a separate question because there was interest there. But what do you make of the business that they've done this summer?
We needed a bit more kind of strength in depth, and we needed to get rid of Emerson Royale has gone, obviously. Japhet Tanganga's gone. Eric Dyer's gone. It looks like Sergio Reguilon's going to go. Who's the other one we're trying to... Giovanni Lo Celso is probably going to go tomorrow. Brian Hill's gone out. There was just a lot of players. Thankfully, Tongi and Ndombele is now off the books. What an expensive mistake that was. So yeah, lots of players that were never going to fit into Ange's style have gone, and they've been replaced by younger, kind of more... One of the things that struck me about Ange is that he's always said he doesn't care about the name of the player essentially coming in. He wants players that want to play for him and that want to play for Tottenham. And if you're a player that's kind of comes, but you're in negotiations, if you're a player that says, oh, I've got this option here, I've got this option here, he's like, oh, okay, go on then. We'll find someone else. If someone else will want to come and play for us and want to come and play for me, which is kind of refreshing to have. So yeah, I think we've had a good transfer window. They've not necessarily been big name signings that some fans might have liked. Archie Gray 18, Lucas Bergvall 18, obviously Timo Werner coming back on a season-long loan. Wilson Odobert came absolutely out of nowhere. We had no idea that was going to happen until about half an hour before it was announced. So yeah, and he was quite exciting against Everton last weekend. So yeah, it's been interesting. We needed backup in the midfield, and he's done that with Bergvall and Gray. We needed forwards, an extra forward. We're going to talk about Solanke in a bit, obviously. I think the only thing we're maybe missing is a little bit more depth at the back. We could probably do with another centre back. There's talk that there might be something in the next day or so. I'm not convinced we'll sign anyone now. But if we were to sign a young defender, the problem we've got in defence is that Christian Romero and Mickey van der Ven are so good, they're not going to be displaced, really. Yeah. And we've got Radu Dragusan, obviously, who was great in the Euros as well, sitting on the bench. Anyone coming in is going to have to be better than the two we've got starting at the minute, which seems unlikely. And if there is someone better than that, they're going to cost a lot of money. Or you're going to have someone who's happy to sit on a bench, which would indicate a young player, essentially. And Jed Spence has kind of come back out of the wilderness to kind of challenge and sit on the bench to be back up to Pedro Porro at right back. Potentially left back is an issue because Udogie is there and Ben Davis can play there, but he's a solid pair of hands. But is he going to excite? Is he going to be the inverted fullback that Ange wants if Udogie's not there? No, he's not. And I think Ange sees him as more of a backup centre back anyway, which may tie into the fact that why we're not looking for another centre back. So yeah, I think it's been a great window. Not a high profile window, but I think it's been a great window for what Spurs needed, really.
Yeah, it looks like a very promising window, isn't it, as you say, for the future. And the youngsters that you've signed have all came with quite big reputations. One man who's also got a big reputation is obviously Dominic Solanke. And you know, Harry Kane left the club last summer. You sort of had a season, didn't you, of Richarlison and Son sort of switching through the middle. Now, Dominic Solanke, 65 million, is that the fee?
It was, yeah.
Yeah. Eddie Howe's obviously worked with them before, loved them. There was big links that Solanke was going to join in January. Now, Eddie Howe came out and shut that down because Newcastle obviously didn't spend in January. We knew that they obviously had PSR issues to coming down the tracks. Tottenham have made their move. Why do you think that they've gone out and done it? And how's he been? I know he's only had, one or two games competitively, but what have you made of that signing?
It was one... I think there were other strikers out there that Tottenham fans might have looked at and thought, oh, why haven't we gone for this person? Why haven't we gone for that person? Victor Gyökeres stands out as a name in Sporting, obviously, with ridiculous number of goals last season in that league. Again, you could argue that it's a lesser league than the Premier League. And there was the argument that, Solanke's been at Chelsea, he's been at Liverpool, and he's not done it. That was a long time ago when he was a lot younger, obviously. And then there's the other argument, it's only been one season that he's been that good at Bournemouth. So I think there were lots of arguments against signing Solanke. The one big one for Spurs is that he's homegrown and fits into that kind of area, which football clubs do need to look at these days with the number of homegrown players we've got, with Kane leaving last year, obviously, with Dyer going in the summer, Oliver Skipp's gone now. There's three prominent English players that have gone from our squad. So yeah, there was a big argument to be made for bringing in an Englishman, and you obviously have to pay the premium for an English player, obviously at 65 million. I like him as a striker. I think he can thrive in an Ange Postecoglou system. We need someone that's going to be in the right place, essentially, for balls across the box from the likes of Son and Kulusevski and Brennan Johnson and Timo Werner. We put balls on a plate for strikers. We just needed someone to put the ball in. We've needed a striker for years, even before Harry Kane left. We needed a backup striker to Harry because we never had anyone that was worth their salt to fill his shoes, essentially, when he was injured or anything. So it's been good to see that we have finally filled that hole. It has cost a lot of money, but I'm fully confident that Solanke will thrive in that Ange Postecoglou system and should score goals for fun. He should have had a goal on his debut against Leicester, but probably a little bit nervous. I think he had 2 or 3 chances that, if he'd been more in tune and more up to speed, he probably would have found the corners and found the back of the net. He put a couple at the straight of the goalkeeper against Leicester. And yeah, we didn't see him against Everton because he picked up an injury in that Leicester game. So I'm hoping he'll be back on Sunday.
Hopefully not for Newcastle, of course. But I mean, the point you made there, when Newcastle were linked, there was opinion was sort of split about Solanke among the Newcastle fan base.
Same with us.
A lot of people point to the price tag that it would cost and the release clause and the fact that, as you say, he's only done it one season. I was personally on the other side of it. I think if Newcastle had the finances to do it, I really like Solanke. I think ultimately, I think coming to Newcastle, he probably would have paid back up to Alexander Isak, but if that is your second choice striker, then really. So I was a little bit jealous when Spurs got the deal done, as was I when this time last year they signed a certain James Maddison. Now, Newcastle United have been trying to sign Mark Gay for what seems like an eternity, but the James Maddison saga somehow seems even longer than that. Newcastle was so keen on him. Has Newcastle's loss been Tottenham's game the last 12 months?
It's hard to say.
Because sorry, just coming into this podcast, I thought I need to ask a question about Maddison, but I don't really know. Has he been good? Has he been bad? I know he had a spell last season where he was really good, but I don't really know what the opinion's like on him at Tottenham at the minute.
He's blown hot and cold. When he's on his game, he's an outstanding player, and he's almost unplayable sometimes. The pockets of space that he finds in between the front three and the midfield, and his dead balls obviously speak for themselves. But yeah, he started the season like a train, like everyone else in the Tottenham team last year. Then picked up a little bit of an injury, and then didn't really come back from it in the second half of last season. I've got a Leicester supporting friend who said he was very much similar at Leicester, like towards the end of the season, just was never as good as he was at the start of the season. So I don't know if that's going to carry on this year or not. He started this season great. I think he's got an assist in both games so far this season. So yeah, he's starting exactly the same way as he did last year. We want to see it carry on, because there is no doubting his talent, and he has all that raw ability to be a match winner for Tottenham, to play those game-winning passes through to a Son or through to a Solanke. He's the man you want, really, isn't he? If you haven't got a Kevin De Bruyne, have I broken up there? Oh, look, I think I'm back. He can be of that mold. He can find those passes like Kevin De Bruyne does. You just want to see it a bit more often from him, but. Yeah, I think ultimately it will be Tottenham's gain and Newcastle's loss, but I don't think you can say that definitively just yet.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. I think Newcastle fans certainly would given the chance, would have signed him last summer, and were very, very disappointed when that deal didn't go through. Lee, we'll just finish on sort of this weekend's game. Just how do you see this one going? How do you see it playing out? You've obviously talked on how Spurs might need to be a little bit more defensive than they have been in the last two outings at St James's. And also, can I get a score prediction from you as well?
Well, it's only Thursday, but I have kept Anthony Gordon and Alexander Isak in my fantasy team. Normally, I would try and find a way to get players out when they play against Spurs, because I don't like having to. Well, I don't cheer them on, obviously, but I don't like having to enjoy the fact they've scored against Spurs. But just history stops me from being too positive about this weekend. I think Ange might play the two more sitting midfielders this time. I think we could see Bissouma and Bentancur potentially on Sunday, maybe Pat Matassar, and sacrificing one of the forward players just because of the ability that Newcastle have got going forward. So yeah, bit more I say a bit more defensive. Ange Postecoglou doesn't like to play defensive football, so you will see Spurs going at it against Newcastle as well. Hopefully Solanke's back, and we've got the three up front. And yeah, if you're pushing me for a prediction, I'm going to go for a scoring draw, I think. That's fingers crossed, because normally I'll probably predict a Newcastle win. But just because it's early in the season, we started last season well, we've started this season well. Newcastle perhaps not quite on it yet. It might be the perfect time to go to St James's Park early on in the season and maybe get a result. 2-2, go on. Yeah, if you're going to push me, 2-2.
Yeah, I think, given the last couple of seasons, that's a very optimistic proposal. But yeah, you've just talked up Tottenham and how good they've started. So I'm just going to just done a podcast this morning where I optimistically predicted Newcastle would win 3-1, and now I'm maybe edging away from that.
I think last couple of times I've been on here with Andrew, I think I've talked up Tottenham a lot. That's what I'm here to do, isn't it? But it's never quite come to fruition. So I'm just hoping finally something happens from a Spurs point of view.
Well, it's good to know that this is a regular tradition in Newcastle on top. So I'll look forward to that win on Sunday. Lee, thanks very much for joining us.
If you want me back on at the beginning of next week, looking really disappointed and demoralised, that's absolutely fine.
We'll speak to you first thing Monday morning.
Cheers,
thanks
Aaron.
very much for joining us, and thanks very much to everyone tuning in on YouTube and across the podcast. We'll be back with a Deadline Day podcast and reaction to that Tottenham game from St James's Park. But thanks very much for tuning in, and we'll speak to you very, very soon.